Setters and liberos aren't allowed to attack the ball off the ground if they move into the front row, but they can apparently spike it from the back row? If that's the case, why can they fake a spike then? How does that make any sense? If you clicked on this video, I assume you're confused by questions like these. The roles, responsibilities, and limitations of different volleyball positions. In this quick and simplified guide, we'll cover everything you need to know about positions in volleyball and get you on your way to spike, dig, and block before you know it. Really quickly. Before you continue, make sure to visit volleyballvault.com for hundreds of free guides, exercise plans, and gear reviews. Ready to go? Let's get started. There are 6 positions in volleyball. Nominally, there are 3 players in the back row and 3 players in the front row, but that can change depending on the formation. Your standard volleyball layout looks like this. Each team has 1 setter, 1 opposite hitter, 2 middle blockers, with the back row middle blocker often substituting for the libero, and 2 outside hitters, 1 in the front row and 1 in the back. Each position is often referred to by its designated number, which you can see mirrored on the screen. Now that we have that covered, let's take a look at each position individually. The job of the setter is, simply put, to create attacking opportunities, which might be the most difficult position to play in volleyball. A good setter will pull all the strings in the team and dictate every single attack, which requires a high level of understanding of the game and unmatched command of the ball. This is why setters often make the most passes out of all players during a game, and they usually have the fewest attempts at spiking. In most formations, setters begin each play in the back row, the so-called number 1 position, but they immediately move to the middle of the front row, from where they dictate the attack. Good setters spot the opposition's weaknesses, and they set the ball for hitters to exploit those weaknesses. To sum it up, setters read the game incredibly well. Their passing is superb and often the best in the team, and they create scoring opportunities for other players. Up next, we have the opposite hitter, also known as the right hitter, given that they play on the right side of the court, or simply the opposite. These players have to spike the ball and score. The vast majority of their responsibilities boil down to that, which is why most good opposites are tall, strong, and have incredible jumping capabilities. Aside from spiking, opposites also have to be good at setting, as they often assume the role of the second setter. This usually happens when the setter receives the served ball and the setting job is left up to the opposite. This is why coaches love to play opposite hitters who have a good passing range. Finally, opposites have to block spikes, coming from the other side all the time. This is where their height comes in handy. Summarizing it, opposite hitters are tall, strong, often left-handed because they play on the right side, and they have to spike, pass, and block well to earn their place in the team. Next, we have the outside hitter, which is the yin to the opposite hitter's yang. Although it's not a given rule, outside hitters are usually the best spikers on the team, and the setter will, if the situation allows it, always set the ball for the outside hitter. Unlike opposite hitters, outside hitters usually don't have to do as much defending as their polar opposites. Given that they play on the left side of the court, they're almost always right-handed. Finally, outside hitters usually don't complete as many passes as opposite hitters, as they're usually the receivers of passes, which is often highlighted by many players as the biggest difference between the 2 positions. This is where the differences between opposite and outside hitters end, though. Outside hitters are also very tall and athletic with incredible jumping abilities. They're incredible at spiking the ball into the opposition, and they do this consistently throughout the match. Now, If you take a look at the layout of a team, you'll notice that there are two outside hitters, one in the front row and one in the back row. The job of back row outside hitters is to receive serve balls and spike from the back row, which is very difficult, as you have to jump quite high to do so. Their jobs are a bit more defensively minded, but they're all in all very similar to the job of the front row outside hitter. The middle blocker is the defensive beast of a volleyball team. As you may assume from the name, the most important job of a middle blocker is to block incoming balls. To do this, they need to be tall and have a great leap when they jump, similar to outside and opposite hitters. In some situations, the middle blocker will also spike the ball, although this is typically not part of their job. Throughout the course of the game, a middle blocker will run left and right alongside the net, and to do that, they need a high level of stamina and agility. By the end of a game, the middle blocker usually has the most completed blocks and the fewest passes, as their job very rarely boils down to creating attacking chances. There are usually two middle blockers in the team, but the back row middle blocker will take their spot on the bench to make room for the libero. Liberos can come off the bench for any player in the back line, not just the middle blocker, but it's usually the middle blocker who substitutes with the libero. To distinguish themselves from other players, liberos wear a different color shirt. Liberos are also known as serve reception specialists, as their main job is to receive a serve in a manageable way and help their team create something out of it. Aside from receiving serves, the libero is often the player preventing spiked balls from hitting the ground. And in order to do this, the player needs to be quick, agile, and athletic. They're also the best at digging, as they have not only insanely quick reflexes that allow this, but they also have a high level of passing prowess. To make sure they always get the ball and nobody gets in their way, liberos are often very loud and assertive. They're going to get that ball by any means necessary, and no one is going to stop them at that, not even their own teammates. If the second ball somehow ends up in the back line, the libero assumes the role of a setter, sending it forward for the spike. To sum up, they're mostly defensive players who protect their team from the opposition's attacking attempts, with offensive actions being their second job. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, there are a few limitations that apply to back row players. Back row players can only attack the ball from behind the 10-foot line. They can land their jumps in front of the line, but they have to take off behind the line, which makes spiking much more difficult for them. Liberos specifically aren't allowed to hand-set the ball for the attackers from the front row. They can only do that from the back row. Liberos, however, have an even bigger limitation set upon them. They're not allowed to attack the ball at any time when the ball is entirely above the top of the net. This means that, in practice, the only way a libero can send the ball to the other side is by digging, usually in a defensive manner. If these rules weren't in place and any position could attack any way they wanted, volleyball would be a much more chaotic sport. Finally, we have defensive specialists, whom you won't see often as not every team has one, and even the teams that have them don't use them often. These players are, as the name implies, simply very good at defending. Coaches will usually use them towards the end of the set to secure the lead and calmly finish the game. These players are in most ways very similar to liberos, specializing in receiving serves and keeping the ball from hitting the ground. There is also the unofficial 7th volleyball role, which goes to the serve specialists. Serve specialists are very, very rare in volleyball, and they're only used when the team notices a weak link in the opposition, which allows the serve specialist to exploit their superpower. Seeing a serve specialist get subbed on, however, is the volleyball equivalent of seeing a solar eclipse. Well, I hope that answered all the questions you had about volleyball positions, folks. Did we forget to point something out? What do you think is the most difficult position in volleyball? Comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and visit volleyballvault.com for more guides. Until next time, serve hard and spike harder.